Hello, everyone. I am Jeannie Walters. It's Friday, and this is another Experience Investigators live webinar. Today, we are just answering your questions. We hear from many of you through email and through our website and through LinkedIn and all these other channels. And today, it's all about answering those questions as well as the questions that you have today. So, what do you want to know about customer experience? I don't have all the answers, but I'll do my best to at least give you what I know. So, go ahead and drop those in as we get started. But I also want to welcome our Director of Marketing, David, who is here every week. Hi,
Hello,
David.
hello. Good to see you as always. Good to be back.
Good to see you. We are coming at you live from Chicago for me and Seattle.
Seattle.
Should I say Seattle or
It's not Seattle proper, but it's
okay?
close enough.
You're forgiven. I'm
Thank you.
not really in Chicago proper either, but I'm really close. Um,
Can we even be trusted, Jeannie?
I know. I start off with a fib. That's not good. So as you join us, we are always curious about where you're joining us from. So go ahead and say hello in the chat and let us know where you coming live from. And if you have those questions, go ahead and drop those in. And I'm also curious, we are in March 2021 now, which means that we've been in this kind of pandemic cycle for at least a year for many of us. Some of you, it's been longer than a year. But I'm just curious how you're doing. Like we are facing this year together, and what does that feel like? Are you able to stay positive, and are you doing different things than you did a couple months ago to take care of yourself and to make sure that we're all getting through this? So I'm just curious, kind of, how are you doing today? Let us know. And I will share that one of the things that I've been really prioritizing is just more kind of self-care for me and the family. So I've been exercising more and getting better sleep and doing things like that just to make sure that I stay positive and focused because it can feel like a long time since then. So what about you, David? What are you doing to take care of yourself right now?
So in January, we ordered a ton of exercise equipment. And apparently, we're not the only ones who are trying to build a home gym in a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of things are on back order. I know you waited for months and months for your Peloton. So
Yep.
slowly and surely pieces are coming. We've
Good.
got a bar and some weights now.
That's
And
good. You can do a
today
lot with that.
today via Amazon, we're getting the little collars that hold the weights on the bar.
Oh, those are
Means,
important.
yeah, now I can actually exercise without being afraid I'm going to drop something heavy on a cat.
Those are very important. Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to mess with, the balance of heavy weights. That's
Uh-uh.
not good. So
No.
that's good. I'm excited for you. Yeah, it's I also have been trying to get fresh air every day in the
Mhm.
middle of the day, which seems to help a lot. So Harvey the dog, he knows that. So he stalks me when I have lunch because he knows that the minute lunch is done, we're out the door. So he literally follows me around and whines until we do that. But it's a good healthy habit. So I hope all of you are experiencing similar things where you're able to take some time and make sure you're taking care of yourself and make sure that you're staying positive during these times. And thank you for being here with us this whole time. I mean, we've been doing this every week for several months now, and it's so great to have some people who are regulars and some new people every week. And it's always really exciting to see who's here. So, for those of you who don't know me, let me go ahead and introduce myself. So, I am Jeannie Walters, and I have a company. I founded and am the CEO of a company called Experience Investigators. I've been doing this work around customer experience for more than 20 years now. I have to just get comfortable saying that. I used to say almost 20 years. I said that for about the last 2 years and realized that that's not true anymore, folks. It's been more than 20 years. And essentially, what I've been really focused on is helping organizations understand that customer experience is, the end to end journey, the end to end experience. It impacts the inside of the organization and the outside. And so we spend a lot of time helping leaders get those foundational pieces right. and making sure that they're communicating within their organization through workshops and training and different consulting and coaching methods. So I love helping CX leaders actually lead and make sure that they're connecting the dots in their organization, as well as making sure that we are delivering the best possible experience for our customers. The mission of my company, you guys have heard me say this, is to create fewer ruined days for customers, because I really believe that makes a better world for all of us. So that's where I'm coming from. You can find a lot of resources on our site. We also have something called the Year of CX right now. So go to yearofcx.com and you will get downloadable tools, resources, things that you can use to actually improve your customer's experience and to improve your organizational adeptness at this. And we are doing that for the whole year. Every few weeks, you'll get a new resource. So be sure you sign up for that as well. We're about halfway through, believe it or not. And we are getting some great feedback on that as well. So thank you for all of you who've reached out about that. So let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Let's find out, what are people asking and how can I help you? So David, where are we starting today?
Yeah, well, first, I just want to say hi to Tyler,
Yay.
joining us from Clarksburg, West Virginia this week.
Tyler's always on the move.
My first guess.
That was not my first guess either. He is always on the move.
Yeah. Where in the world is Tyler Betts? My favorite childhood video game. Want to say hi to Mindy in New York City. Say hey to Olatoye in Nigeria. Great to see all of you again. Let's start off with a question that came in from email this week. So this question asks, I recently attended your webinar on building a CX mission. Our team is going to build a mission statement, and I was wondering if you could provide some good B2B examples to help them better understand the concept. I can find good B2C examples on the web, but not many B2B ones. Can you help?
Sure. Yeah. And I totally relate to this because it's hard to find these examples for B2B. And for those of you who are in B2B, you probably know that a lot of this is about delivering on things that we can't always talk about, right? Like sometimes we have to keep some of that information to ourselves. We don't put it out there as readily as a B2C. So I will share two examples of things that I worked on and partnered with different clients. So I won't be able to share the specific thing, but hopefully this will help you. One is, I want to remind you, whenever you're working on a CX mission, a couple things can happen. We can feel like, okay, this is all about the customers and this is all about the product that we're delivering. I want you to think about this a little differently, because ideally a customer experience mission is not just about how are you delivering your product, but it's about how do we show up consistently, no matter what, all the time for our customers. What is the promise that we're making there? So whether somebody is calling in or they're getting an invoice, we're still living up to that mission. So that's one way to think about it. The other way to think about it is that when you're talking about something as important as a mission, you have to make sure that this is something you can live up to inside your organization as well. And so, for example, if you say, we will always be honest, that's who we are, then you better believe that when you're talking to your colleagues, that is one of the things that you will live up to. So making sure that you can connect the dots between that employee experience, your culture, and the customer experience, and not just about the moment of transaction, the moment of purchase or anything like that. This is about the entire journey. So two examples I can share. One, there was a law firm that I worked with. They were big. They had lots of B2B clients, as you can imagine, or I should say they provided their services to businesses. And one of the things that we tried to figure out is like, what's really different from one law firm to the other? They could talk about their success rates as far as how many cases they've won and things like that. Sometimes smaller lawyers will talk about, their rates compared to the big law firms and saying that they're lower. But what is it that makes one different from the next? And what we identified for them was that the feedback they got from clients was, you know what, you don't make me feel dumb. You don't make me feel like I should know this stuff. Every time I talk to you, I feel like we're having a real conversation, and you're not approaching it from this high and mighty place. You're approaching it from a place of humility. And so that's what we doubled down on. We said, you know what, if we can have an experience that is based in humility, that is based in listening with humility, then we are living up to that promise. And so that includes everything from how you onboard people, how you train people, how you answer the phone for that law firm, how you make appointments, all of these things. And so that was really a great place to get grounded for them and also identify what really makes us different than everybody else. I sometimes people come to me and they say, "We've got it. We're going to deliver high quality experiences." That's not really a mission. That, we don't know what high quality means. We're not saying this is who we are no matter what. And so that's what you need to tap into with this. The other example is for a manufacturer. And what they did was they produced elements that actually went into big machinery like MRI machines in hospitals and actual rockets that go to space. Pretty cool stuff. But all of their communications were really about quality, were about basically we have the best engineers, we have the best factories, all of those things. And their feedback around things like their billing process was pretty painful for customers. Also internally, they had a lot of friction between one department to the next. And so what we did was we really talked about what are our products doing? Like what do they actually do? Well, they help people do amazing things, right? They help people cure people. They help people go to space. That is remarkable. And so we came up with a mission that was about going beyond because it's not just about the products and services. That also communicated, okay, how are we going to show up for our customers no matter what? And that was really about, you know what, we're going to go beyond the typical communication. We're going to go beyond just sending an invoice. We're going to make sure that we're doing all of that for our customers. But then on the flip side, we're also going to do that inside our organization. So we kind of removed the excuses of, well, that department didn't call me back and this and that. Then you could start aligning best practices and behaviors with this experience mission that was so meaningful because it really was what they did. They helped everybody go beyond where they were. And so we did, all sorts of fun things around that, but people started really internalizing it. And that's what you're looking for with that mission. You don't want 17 bullet points. You don't want to talk about all sorts of words that are just jargon in your industry. You want to really narrow in on who are we and how do we show up no matter what. This is the standard for us. And sometimes that means you have to make hard choices. Sometimes you have to decide, okay, if the best for us means that we're going to be highly accurate no matter what, then we can't always be the fastest. And so you have to put a stake in the ground sometimes and say, this is who we are, this is what we're going to live up to, and this is why. So I hope that's helpful. B2B can be really challenging because there are so many layers as well. So the other thing I'd recommend is sometimes you have this overarching customer experience mission. It's okay to have some like submissions for different parts of your organization, especially for large global scale, organizations that have basically multi-businesses on their own. Sometimes you need to do that. But I would say whatever you have for that overall arching customer experience mission, make sure it all ties back to that. Because if you get that right, then everybody starts getting more and more on board and you start really recognizing, okay, how did we mess up for this customer? Well, we didn't live up to our mission. And then you can start backtracking and figuring out what do we do next time so that we do live up to that. So great question.
Before we get to another question, I want to say hi to Lama in Palestine, Gustavo in Brazil, and Io in Toronto.
I love it. We are representing a lot of continents today. That's pretty exciting.
I love, especially, as we still feel cooped up and isolated from the world, I love one of the good things about technology, which is not perfect by any means, but I love that it can connect folks from around the world like this. It's really cool.
Cool.
And in the spirit of listening with humility, this goes for anybody. If I mispronounce your name, feel free to correct me. I would much rather, we have a lot of repeat, visitors from the community on these, and I would love to make sure that I'm saying your name right. So I welcome those corrections. With that in mind, if you've got questions, keep them coming. And I'm going to throw out another question that came in. This one in response to your article from last week. Last week, you wrote about ways to talk about customer experience. And so one of the comments that came back was, these are all great, but they tend to be about how we can talk about customer experience. Can you recommend ways to invite and encourage others in the organization to start talking about customer experience as well, so it becomes more of a conversation?
Love this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it has to be a conversation, right? So if you haven't seen that article, essentially what I did was outline 12 different ways we can talk about customer experience. And the reason it's so important is because inside your organization, especially if you're retrofitting customer experience kind of into your business strategy and your processes and everything, it can feel very foreign and like a big change to people. And whenever there's a big change, we need to communicate about it more than we think. And we need to reassure people with why we're doing this. So the very first thing I say is start with the why. We need to, really recognize why are we doing this and talk about that a lot. But what we're trying to do there is exactly what this question asks, which is we're trying to start a dialogue. We're trying to start a conversation. Because when customer experience is embedded in the organization, when it's really part of the DNA, every single employee feels empowered to not only deliver it, they understand what that looks like, what the exceptional rules are as far as how are we delivering this, but they're also empowered to say, you know what, I think we could do this better. Or, you know what, this is not working for our customers. Let's figure this out. And they know where to put that feedback, how to actually close those loops, all of those things. So if we are looking for that level of empowerment with our employees, one of the things that I love is this idea of recognizing very often and rewarding employees who are delivering on that. So let's say we have a great customer experience mission and we're really trying to get everybody on board with that. Well, if we see that somebody really lived up to that mission on behalf of our customers, we want to recognize that. We want to make sure that that is something where we go to that person and we say, you know what, you did this so well that now we want everybody else to understand what you did because this is going to be the new standard for us. We're going to share what you did as a best practice. And then you start seeing some momentum around people who are looking around thinking, wow, they're taking this seriously. They're not only talking to me, they're talking with us about what are we doing so that we can deliver the best experience for the customer. So that's one way to kind of start that dialogue. The other is to, lean in to the mission. You guys hear me say this all the time, but really ask your department heads to hold meetings where they talk about what were the mission moments of the week? How did we do this? How do we live up to this? Where did we not live up to it and why? And can we figure out how to make sure that we live up to it next time? So breaking down things into these moments of did we live up to this or not can be super helpful. And I would also say if you are dealing with like field people or you have, many, many contractors out there who maybe you don't communicate with as much, then I love the programs that include, CX peer champions. So find those people in your departments, in your teams, in your field who are already on board with this. They are your cheerleaders. They are the ones who are saying, yes, let's do this with customer experience. Create a champions program where then they are actually empowered to speak about this with their teams. And then they bring that back to the overall CX champion team, and they can all learn from each other and really figure out what's working, what's not at that team level. And so then you have not only you and maybe the CX leaders talking about this, you have ambassadors throughout your organization who are literally walking the talk and getting people on board because they're peers. They're saying, this is why this is so important for us, for our team, and this is what we're doing about it. So all of those different ways are just powerful ways to, again, get people to internalize it and then have those two-way communication conversations that we desperately need when we're rolling out customer experience.
And if you are interested in reading that article from last week, if you haven't seen it already, you can find it at experienceinvestigators.com/resources. That's where all of those articles are. And the most recent one, the one right at the top, is the one that the question asker was referring to there. So keep your questions coming, or I should say, bring your questions on. We've got one more that came in from outside the chat. So let's jump to that one. Jeannie, you've talked and written and had sessions like this around customer journey mapping and using customer journey mapping to shift as COVID has changed the landscape of how we operate. Looking forward, as vaccines become more prominent, and hopefully we kind of hopefully we get over this and continue to improve. How can we use customer journey mapping to sort of prepare for what things are going to look like next?
I love this question. So, I think we've all, at least I have, kind of come to the conclusion that, it's not a, we're going to open the door and close the door behind us and it'll be back to normal. That's not what we're facing at this moment. As we have different rollouts of vaccine distribution, as we have different comfort levels with the vaccines, different rules around travel, around group gatherings, things like that, it's going to take a while. And I think at least I have come to that conclusion. And what I am seeing a lot of right now is this idea that there will be kind of three distinct phases of, we've got where we are now with a lot of people kind of stuck at home and things like that. Then we've got the hybrid model where we're going to have some people coming in, we're going to have some people that we might still need to serve in a more digital way. And then it's going to be back to normal. And I push back on this a little bit because essentially we have to understand our customers. We have to understand what we're offering and how that's going to look in the future. And we also have to understand that our customers are not all the same in this regard. There will be so many different levels of both, concerns around health, but also different levels of what are people going to be comfortable with even after vaccines. Will they go to a crowded theater? I don't know. I think that maybe people will still feel kind of weird about that. And so we have to then think of, okay, how can we both provide the right experience in the right moment and recognize that we have to reassure our customers in different ways than we have in the past. And we also have to respect where they are on their individual journey around this. I mean, none of us, at least nobody I know, has been through a pandemic before. And so this is new to a lot of people. A lot of people went through a lot of hardship and challenges. There was, I know in this country, in the United States, there was a mental health crisis essentially where a lot of people had a lot of issues around that and might be, still dealing with some of the aftermath of that. So what I would recommend is look at this as, how can we use things like customer journey mapping to really think about, okay, let's get into this persona. Let's think about the person who is comfortable coming back to us in person. What would their journey look like? Well, even if we think, oh, it'll be just like it was before, that's not really true either, because there might be different rules around things like physical distance. And, we might have a different floor plan than we used to. Even when we're talking about bringing employees back to the office, that's going to be different, as there might be traffic patterns that people have to recognize and different rules even around. I mean, I heard something about, these big office buildings. How are they going to deal with people all going to the women's room or the men's room at the same time? We have to think through a lot of those things that before used to be like, oh, okay, people will just stand in line. That might not be an option. So what I would do is think through, okay, if everybody's coming back, if they have a high comfort level, what does that look like? How can we use journey mapping to really think about that actual experience? What about the next tier of people who are comfortable with some of this, but maybe not all the way? Well, they might still really appreciate our curbside delivery. They might still really appreciate certain things. What are the proactive ways we can serve them? And then keep going down that list until you can really figure out who are we serving and what's most important to them. Now, the flip side of this is we have to deliver service at each of those phases, even or each of those kind of levels, even if they're all at the same time. And so, one of the tools you can use for that is service blueprinting, where you're thinking about not just what is the customer experiencing, but how do we actually deliver that? What are the processes and the systems and the protocols? And how do we train employees around these different things? So, service blueprinting is a really powerful tool that I think we don't leverage enough right now. And it doesn't have to be everything at once. You can think through, okay, what is that like for somebody who's waiting in line and they're kind of uncomfortable with the line waiting? What can we do to give them space to understand how to deliver to them? Can we alert people on their phones? Can we provide a waiting area that's got a lot of room? Things like that. And so I'm using pretty basic examples of businesses, but that's the idea of it. And I do have a LinkedIn Learning course all about service blueprinting. It's a short one too. I don't think it's even an hour long, but that gives you some tools and techniques for how to apply that process, that best practice to your organization. I would really encourage you to start thinking through what is the reality for our customers? What is the reality for this evolution we're all going through? And then how can we best deliver to them?
Bonus points to Tyler, who commented on service blueprinting, I think before you even said it, Jeannie, which is really, really cool to
Wow.
see, because I feel like people don't talk about service blueprinting enough.
It's true. Mind meld,
Yeah.
Tyler and I.
Yeah, Tyler, you've been paying attention. Yeah, so Tyler says, one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of friction, right? We're seeing some local governments like Texas saying mask mandates are over, companies like Target saying no, they're still in place. And so, yeah, customer service blueprinting can definitely be a way to help you design solutions that delight those who are ready for in person and still serve people who are looking for those digital solutions.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, I think that's a great point too, that you can break it down to the level of, okay, what does the digital experience look like? What does the mobile experience look like? All of those things. And service blueprinting, because sometimes it can feel really overwhelming. I mean, one of the things I see is that we do a big journey map and it's got all these different layers because people come in via mobile or digital or this or that. And then you start saying, okay, these are all the changes we need to make. And people kind of go, oh man, this is not what we signed up for. And that, taking those different pieces where you have these separate teams even in your organization and breaking that out into service blueprints can really help everybody see, okay, it's not that much. We just need to change this and this. And if you can do that with the different teams, but then layer those blueprints on top of each other to make sure that you're not duplicating work and also that you are really delivering a seamless experience for the customer, that can all be really powerful and a great way to get everybody on board too. They start really understanding, what, even if I never talk to a customer, I'm still part of delivering the customer experience. And that is what you want at the end of the day. You want everybody in your organization on board with understanding that we're all in this. Everybody has to take accountability for the customer experience.
And I want to highlight Tyler. Thank you. He says, if you haven't done the training on service blueprints, do so ASAP. If you really want to make an impact on the moments that matter, nothing beats service blueprints. So
Nice.
put that link back up. And thank you, Tyler, for the recommendation. I want to highlight one comment that Lama added. This is going back to that conversation around ways to invite and encourage other people to actually want to talk about customer experience. Mm-hmm. She says the difficult part is working on the mindset.
Yes.
And when I think of mindset, I think of customer experience success statements first and foremost. But I'm curious to hear from you whether it is CX success statements or otherwise, kind of some thoughts around how we can really get people to adopt the mindset that we want them to around customer experience.
Well, I love that you went to the success statement because I didn't. So that's really interesting. But I think you bring up a really good point. So a lot of times, what happens when we talk about mindset or when we talk about um, things that feel a little soft, a little like, ooh, a lot of people just shut down. They're like, well, this doesn't apply to business, or they tell me on, when I tell them what I do about customer experience, they say, oh, yeah, that's just common sense. And they don't really see, they don't connect the dots that it's actually a strategy and it requires business discipline and it requires all these things. So, one thing about the mindset that I like to highlight, no matter who I talk to, is this is harder than we give it credit for. When we are trying to really think about our customers' experience, when we are trying to understand their journey, and people say all the time, oh, we walk in our customers' shoes, right? We get it. None of us can do that. And I hate to say that because I know that's a very popular way to approach things, but none of us are capable of actually looking at things through our customers' eyes or understanding their hearts and minds as much as we want to. And so we can use feedback, we can use AI, we can use all these amazing tools to get close to that, to try to understand them. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is really hard. And so I say that because I think it's really important to acknowledge that, you know what, we are focused on the inside of our organization. We have tasks to do. I have yet to meet any CX leader who has enough resources and plenty of time and a big team to handle things. CX leaders are notoriously under resourced. And so we have certain short term goals and tasks we just have to accomplish. And that takes away some of what we need in order to deliver endless or seamless customer experience as well. So the first thing I like to do is kind of highlight that and say, you know what, let's acknowledge that this is hard work. I also want to acknowledge that, when we are talking about a mindset around customer experience, we are not talking about one part of the journey. We are not talking about just reactive service. We're talking about thinking in a design thinking way, in a proactive approach way, where we're looking at what can we do to help the customer in this moment, in their real lives. In their real lives is so important too, because we love to sugarcoat what their journey actually is. And then to David's point, it's such a great point. We have this customer experience success statement, and we really encourage all of our clients to use it. And we have a free downloadable for you. There's a full workbook on this if you want to tackle this on your own. And essentially, it's taking, okay, what do you want to do with customer experience? How do we define that success? Because it's never enough to say, you know what? We are customer centric now. So, yay for us. And we're going to deliver an exceptional customer experience no matter what. Well, that sounds great, but how do you define that? What is an exceptional customer experience? And how does that actually drive your business forward? So, what the success statement does is it takes your organizational goals, your leadership goals, and then it ties those to the customer experience goals that you are defining. And it helps everybody realize, you know what, when we talk about things like, hey, our NPS went up, that's not just a nice thing. If we know that when our NPS goes up, we get more word of mouth referrals. Well, those referrals are easier sales, and those referrals, once they become customers, spend more money with us. That all drives our revenue goals for the year. And that makes our CEO and our COO and our CFO, they're all happy when that happens. We can also talk about what savings we have when we are being proactive about service and we're reducing the number of service calls. So all of those things connect together. And that's when you start seeing that momentum of people saying, oh, I get it. Okay, this is not just something that we're doing for fun. We're actually investing in the customer experience because we will get a return. We will get a return in not just those hard and fast numbers, but we'll get a return in our employee experience, because nobody wants to work in a place where everybody's complaining and there are all these issues and everything else. If you're working towards a really positive goal for your customers and you're starting to see those results, the employee experience, the morale will go up. You'll have employees who stay longer with you. you'll reduce the need for, employee churn and the recruiting, the constant recruiting and things like that. So there are all sorts of ways to get a return on this investment. And that can help everybody in your organization have that mindset of, okay, we know what success is, we know how to deliver it, we're tracking it, and this is meaningful. This is about our mission. This is something that we are doing for our purpose, not just something that's nice to have. Tying all of that together, that's when you see some remarkable changes. And I think I just named two of the many things I mentioned in that ROI post I did a few weeks ago. So there is a blog out there, an article about the many ways you can get a return on the investment of customer experience. And we also have an interactive calculator that you can use now. So all sorts of ways that you can start really digging into this so that you can craft that mindset discussion around not only these lofty ideas and these important ideas around mission, but also around, hey, this is going to help our business succeed, and here's how.
I'll put up a link to that calculator for anybody who's interested. But first, I want to highlight a great question from Yusuf. So he asks, when talking about moments, and I think especially moments where we're having opportunities to gather feedback, what's the best way to capture that feedback from a survey comment or a social media comment or a product review? And then when we get that, should we quantify and aggregate that feedback? Should we deal with it individually? What's the best way to react to that?
Yes. So
would you like to expand on that?
There are lots of ways to do this. And, it is important to quantify, because by recognizing which moments matter to either the majority of your customers, that's an obvious one. But sometimes you want to look at what matters to our key customers in key moments. So, for example, if you are focused on, let's say, a renewal product, you want people to renew every year, and you start noticing that there's an issue, a month or two before people renew, even though that might not serve every single customer. If you look at the benefit of that, you definitely want to zero in on that for your customers and say, that's a moment that matters. Let's attack that. The other thing I would say is I love social media comments, user reviews, verbatims on surveys, things like that, because it tells the customer story in their own voice. And sometimes that's what you need to move your leadership. That's what you need to socialize these ideas, because it's really easy to say, like, a month before, 30 days before renewal is a moment. Well, that sounds very objective, and that could be very important. But if you say it's really important, and these three quotes are why, and you can hear the customer saying, wow, this really upset me, and I will not be renewing even though I was planning, and I will tell all my friends not to renew. That's a powerful statement. That's emotional. And so when you start connecting those things with leadership, when you start storytelling like that on behalf of the customer, they can start really understanding why these moments matter. I would say that sometimes we do get hung up on data and surveys. You guys have heard me say this, where if we are waiting for a survey to tell us something we already know, that's not a great use of a survey. So sometimes we know these moments, and I think we just have to acknowledge that. We know when our clients are over the moon or our customers are super happy with something. We know that moment in the journey. So what we should do is look at that and say, okay, this is a really great moment. It matters to our customers. What can we do to turn up the volume here? How can we celebrate with them? How can we take what they're feeling and put that in more places in the journey? We might not need a survey to tell us that. The same thing with some of the big pain points. If we know that there is a huge moment that everybody hates, that we've never fixed, that we keep talking about, then maybe it's time to just do something about it and say, you know what, this is a moment of truth. We need to really understand that and move forward. So look for those types of moments that you already know. Look for where do people tell you over and over in surveys something's going on. And definitely categorize that and definitely quantify that as much as you can, because if you can then quantify it by saying, you know what, we've identified that if we fixed this moment, we could actually get 10% higher renewals. Well, that's a big return, and that gets you funding, and that gets you priority and all of those things. So that's really what we need to look for, are Where do we know this is impacting both the business and our customers the most? And then if we find things that maybe aren't as quantifiable, but we just know they're wrong, let's fix those too. Let's prioritize fixing those too. If we know, for instance, that we are misleading our customers because we say something in marketing that we can't deliver, well, that's a really important thing. Even if customers don't really acknowledge it, or maybe that's not one of your biggest complaints, if you know that's happening, this is where integrity matters. We have to stand up for who we are and who our customers are, and we have to really fight the good fight for them. And I think that's something that we overlook sometimes. We rely on surveys and data, and we ignore that little voice in our head saying, this is not a great way to treat people. Make sure that we're focused on those moments too.
There's a comment from Tyler that I really like. He says, if 3 people are pointing to a hole in the road, you don't need to ask 97 other people if there's a hole in the road to make sure you have the right sample size.
Yes. 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 And we have seen this so many times where people will tell us what's wrong and then they'll say, well, we'll send out a survey. It's like, why? Why do we need that? And we've just been trained as business people to always have data. But I mean, some people don't like when I say this, but anecdotal data is still data. So when you get somebody who tells you something and you think, wow, if this is really happening, this is bad, and you can find, 2 or 3 anecdotes saying that, then it's bad. So trust your gut, trust your instinct. To Tyler's wonderful story there. Yeah, if you've got people pointing at the hole in the road, fix the road.
I'm going to put up the link to the ROI calculator in just a second. But before I do, we've got a great question from Lama here around ROI.
Great.
Do you agree with this formula? Customer experience plus employee experience equals return on investment.
Wow. So I would say that's really broad. So we would want to break that down a little bit. But in theory, yes, what we're talking about is if you have, I mean, you cannot have a great customer experience without an employee experience that matches. That's it, you know? So if you are not investing in both, then you're missing huge opportunities. The other thing around employee experience and culture that I think is overlooked a lot is inviting the people in human resources to the table to talk about customer experience. And the reason you want to do that is because in an ideal world, the employee experience, including how people are hired, how they're onboarded, how they are evaluated, and the rewards and incentives that they get, those are all tied back to the customer experience because that's what we want. We want people invested in this, and we want to show them that we want them invested in it. And so when we're only talking about short-term goals with our employees, when we're only talking about internal things, then how can we expect them to invest in the customer experience? The same thing with in reverse, right? Like we want to work with the employee experience because we want to bring back that feedback and that information that we're getting from the working on the customer experience and bring it back to the employee experience. And so it really is a cycle that can't be broken. And we need to just keep connecting those dots. And I think with ROI specifically, there are lots of different ways to break this down. The calculator we have is around customer lifetime value, as well as some other things. So when you're looking at tools like that, then you can break that down even more and say, well, this is what it costs us every time an employee leaves, right, before a year. Or this is what it costs us when we don't have the right training for our employees. So all of those things, you can start tying back to all these different levels of ROI and make sure you're really making the case for both. But in theory, I totally agree. It takes both and it's constant. And we have to just always think about those two things together. So I wish that customer experience leaders would work more closely with the HR leaders and other people who are focused on the inside and the employee experience. And guess what? I have seen over and over chief HR officers, learning and development leaders, people like that, they want this. They want this. They are really looking for ways to do this, but we need to give them the right information. We need to help them have that seat at the table so that we're all speaking the same language, because otherwise there is a disconnect and it doesn't serve anybody.
That's fantastic. Well, that is going to do it for our questions this week. But Jeannie, if people have questions over the course of the week before we do our next session, or just want to connect with you or get more resources, where can they do that?
Yeah, they can do that. So many places, really. We are all over the place. I just joined Clubhouse. For those of you on Clubhouse, I don't know what I'm doing there, but if you want to chat there, let me know. And yeah, you can find us on email. I'm on Twitter, as well as our brand on Twitter. We have a Facebook page, and we have all these resources for you at our site of experienceinvestigators.com. And if you are looking for those LinkedIn courses or things like that, let us know that too, but we can point you in the right direction, or just do some searches on LinkedIn. There are 4 current courses out there all about customer experience. And we have some other exciting things coming up in the year of CX. So don't forget to sign up at yearofcx.com. As always, thank you for all the work you're doing on behalf of your customers. And thank you for being here. We deliver these once a week, either live or recorded. And we try to just provide this space for us to chat about customer experience, because we know that you are the ones in the trenches doing this every day. So thank you so much for all you do. And by being here, you're helping me live our mission, which is to create fewer ruined days for customers. So thank you for helping me live that mission. We'll see you next time. Have a great weekend. Thanks for being here.